Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you ready to take your piano journey to the next level? Introducing the pianoinspires.com subscription. With the pianoinspires.com subscription, you'll gain access to hundreds of teaching videos and webinars by experts in our field. This wide variety of topics is perfect for teachers, students, new professionals, advanced performers, and amateur pianists. These videos will inspire and guide you every step of the way. But that's not all. Your subscription also includes access to Piano Magazine. Dive into each issue packed with the most dynamic content, expert interviews, music, and book reviews, and more to keep you connected with the piano community. Check out pianoinspires.com today and unlock a world of piano teaching, learning, and performing. For more information, visit pianoinspires.com/subscribe and use coupon code podcast15 and subscribe today for less than $3 per month. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast and enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Andrea McAlister and I'm Director of Digital Programming for the Francis Clark Center. And I'm so happy to be joined today by Peter Mack. Irish pianist Peter Mack is in great demand as a performer, clinician, convention artist, adjudicator, and teacher. Celebrated for his moving playing and his easy rapport with audiences, he has performed throughout the United States and Europe, as well as in Australia, India, and the former Soviet Union. He is currently the president of the Music Teachers National Association.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, it is wonderful to see you this morning. And as we talk about, you are the president of the Music Teachers National Association. We are here at the 2024 conference. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
Let's start with young Peter Mack and just take us back to Ireland. What was it like growing up, and how did music play a part of your early years?
Well, I grew up, my father was a minister. My mother was a grade school teacher. I was an only child. I suppose I still am an only child. And having piano lessons was part of a very nice middle-class education. And so at about 5, I was brought to a woman who her name was Miss Loudon, and she lived very close to where we lived. And so, and she was a multi-teacher before that existed, because she had a front room and a back room in her house with a double door in between, and she would sit in the middle of the double door, and she had two pianos, and she would have someone having their lesson in the front room and someone having their lesson in the back room, and she would sit in the middle and she would knit. So she was unbelievably productive. And so that was, I knew nothing about what lessons were. That was what, and so she would teach one, and she would be teaching the other while the other was playing. And I suppose she was, anyway.
That is true multitasking.
It really was. It was hive of industry. The knitting, I think, she made sure that she didn't waste her time. And she started me on John Thompson, and I loved John Thompson, and I loved John. And she, so we did book 1, which was the one with the, well, I think we did Teaching Little Fingers to Play, and then we did book 1, and then we went on to book 2. And when it was book 2, she said, in book 2, you'll hear pieces like this. And she played, and my mother tells the story, I think it was the Blue Danube. And I was like, oh, and then I played the Blue Danube because I had a good ear, and I didn't know that was not what you were supposed to do. But she was angry, and she said, don't play by ear. And then she said to my mother, he will be one of those children who never learns how to read if he plays by ear. And then she said, you must not let him do that. He must only read. And so she sent my mother home with very strong instructions. And then she called the house, and my father was there. And she said to my father, she said, you must lock up the piano and not let him at the piano unless you are sure he has a book in front of him and is reading. And she was very very annoyed. And I think my father was not used to being told what to do, and it did not go well. So he said to my mother, I think we have to find another piano teacher. And then, so now I'm 6, and we're looking, and the most prestigious place in Dublin was the Royal Irish Academy of Music. And we went there, and I had a teacher there. And she was both a really good teacher and a really bad teacher, because she was really good because she did know what she was doing, and she did know how her students, how to make them sound more musical, and she was bad because she was she taught by fear and intimidation. And John Kimura Parker said once in a lecture I saw him give, he said, there are 2 ways to teach. One of them is through fear and intimidation, and the other is by nurturing a love of music. And the sad thing is that both of them work. And so she didn't yell or anything. She asked the questions that have no answer, and what you do with that. And I think it's almost more abusive than saying, why didn't you do that? Because she would say, did you? And she had the most calm voice. She would say, did you put 4th finger on that B flat? And there would be a big 4 written over it. And I would say, no. And she would say, did I tell you to put 4th finger on that B flat? And of course, there's the big 4 there. So of course, yes. And then she would say, why didn't you put 4th finger on that B flat? And there's no answer to that question. And so you squirm. And then if you do that over and over, you can have anyone in tears. It doesn't matter what old age they are. Doesn't matter.
And how old were you?
I was 6, 7. I mean, it was, you can tell I'm still angry about it. I think that is just such a sadistic way to teach. And maybe she didn't even know what she was doing. She just found it very effective. But I hated piano lessons. Because they were horrible. And my mother, I still would bring me to the Royal Irish Academy of Music, this great neoclassical building in the late 18th century in Dublin. And it had big pillars in the entryway. And so my lesson was at 2:30, and she would bring me there. And then I would hide behind a pillar. Until I couldn't I couldn't delay it anymore. And so I was always late to the lesson. So she was probably always in a bad mood because this kid is late. But in Ireland, we're competition mad. I mean, well, no, I say we are now. I have no idea now, but we used to be competition mad. And there was a competition called the Feis Matthew, which was, Feis is the Irish word for festival. And Matthew was after a temperance leader whose name was Father Matthew. And it was in this big hall in the north side of Dublin, and she entered me in the under 10s, and I was 6, and I still remember the 2 pieces that I played. I played Spring Morning by Madeline Dring, and Irish Legend. I think Irish Legend was by Leslie Fly. Anyway, we played those pieces. I could still probably play those pieces now, and it is not today or yesterday. And I played, and how it worked. I mean, there were 110 or 100. I mean, there were lots and lots of children in that class, and how you would grade that, or how you would do that is they would take all the kids would play one after another, and the one adjudicator, who was the all-seeing, omniscient God, would sit there and would make notes, and then everybody would gather at 3:00 on Sunday or whenever it was, and they would read out names for the recalls, and they would say the recalls are numbers 3, 57, 64, 101, and 105. And then those children, one after another, would play their pieces again. And then the adjudicator would decide. And I was recalled. And I was the youngest one to recall, and I played my pieces. But at the end of Irish Legend, I held the pedal, and I just kept holding it. And then I let off, and it was too long. And my mother knew it was too long. So when the results were announced, I wasn't chosen. I wasn't first or second or third, But I did. I guess I might have been third because I got a bronze medal, which I still have somewhere. Yeah. So I mean, maybe I was better. But my teacher, my mother said that sort of the light of expectation went in her eyes because I was 6 and it was the under 10s, and so this was a child who could do things for her. So
it's interesting how you just said you were a student who could do things for her.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yes.
And this memory is it's like been burned into your being.
It was one of the most, I would say, the competition wasn't traumatic for me. What's funny is that it was traumatic for my parents. So there was a thing. I mean, I'm dating myself now. There was a thing called a spirograph. And a spirograph was this thing where you would take a pencil and there was sort of a little machine with discs, and it would make sort of psychedelic patterns, and I really wanted one. And my parents said, "Well, if you win, we'll get you a spirograph." And I didn't win, but my father said to my mother while I was playing, we'll get him a spirograph because they were so nervous and so thought it was so scary. And I was, too young to be nervous, or I just wasn't.
Why do you think they were so nervous on your behalf?
I think, performing in public and you're speaking in public is supposed to be the number one fear of people, more than dentist needles or more than anything. I mean, it's, and so I think and it's funny because my father was a minister, was used to getting up in front of people, and my mother was a teacher so she's used to getting up in front of an audience of, 30 kids or whatever. And I mean, they both were used to it, but I guess they just thought it was very scary to do. And so I got my spirograph, very nice, and they resolved that I was not going to do any more competitions. And then when my teacher, with the light of success in her eyes, said, "Now, next year he'll do that," my father said, "No, he won't do any more competitions." And she miscalculated because she thought that she was famous enough, and she was a famous teacher. She thought, if I say I won't teach him, they will cave. And she said, "I won't teach him if he doesn't do competitions." And my parents said, "Well, then you won't teach him." And that was that. And I was thrilled because, I mean,
I'm sure.
it was an end to the questions that have no answer. And if I think of one of sort of, how you have regrets? Well, no, you probably don't have regrets because you're fabulous.
We all have. We all have regrets. Yes.
If I think of regrets that I have in my life, when I started out teaching when I was 18, and I taught with the questions that have no answer, because I guess even though so we'll move on. I had this. So then there was a friend of my mother's who could play the piano. And my mother was a primary school teacher. She was a primary school teacher, and she would come to the house and she would teach me, and that was very nice. But then she got married, or she was going to get married, and so then she wasn't going to teach me anymore. And so then we looked for another, and her name was Miss Acorn, and I don't know what her married name was, but and then we got May Cruz, and May Cruz was a local teacher, and she came to the house, which was that was unusual in Ireland back then. But so she came to the house, and she was a bar room pianist. That's what she did. And so I learned 77 now sounds. And Lara's theme, "In the Shadow of Your Smile," and "Up and Away in My Beautiful Balloon," and it was lovely. And I liked that very much. And I would play, and then she had there was a bar that she played in called the Good Times. And she would play in the Good Times on Friday and Saturday, but I guess it was really popular. And so they said, we'll have you 5 days a week or 7 days or whatever. She went full time in the Good Times. And
full time in the Good
Full
Times.
time in the Good Times. And then she didn't teach anymore. So she didn't come. And then there was another, so that now we're on to the next teacher. And by now I'm maybe 10. And there was a teacher called Miss Somerville, and she was in the College of Music. And the College of Music didn't nearly have the snob appeal that the Royal Irish Academy did, but it was a good school, you know. And so she taught in the College of Music, but she taught in her home because we were very close. And so then because she was in the College of Music, she did all the sort of the things that a respectable teacher does, like putting children in the Feis Matthew. And so we're back to the Feis Matthew again at the age of maybe 11 now. And I played I played the F minor nocturne of Chopin in the romantic class in the Feis Matthew for the I guess the 11 to 14. And I did not win. And there were 2 children who played. No, there was one child who played 2 pieces, and she played the Grieg Nocturne and the Spinning Song of Mendelssohn. And I had never heard a piece as beautiful as the Grieg Nocturne. And the Spinning Song of Mendelssohn was just so, I mean, her fingers went so fast. And she won. And her name was Yumi Inaba. She was the daughter of the Japanese ambassador. And she went on to Juilliard to study with Sasha Gordonitsky. I mean, she was a really good pianist, but I was like, she's just, I had never heard the piano played in that way, and I never knew that it could be played in that way. And I had, I decided I'm going to win this competition next year. And Miss Somerville, who was my teacher, said, okay, you can do it again. And I didn't play, I don't know why I didn't play the pieces that she played, that Yumi Inaba played, maybe because they were too difficult or I just didn't know. But we had a record called The Chopin I Love by Rubinstein, and he played the D-flat Nocturne, Opus 27, number 2. And so I'm going to play that. And so I learned that, and I played that, and I won next year. And when I won, Miss Somerville, I think, so the principal of the College of Music was a teacher called Frank Heenan, and she said, you know, you should apply to study with Frank Heenan. And she knew Frank Heenan because, you know, he was and she really loved him. And so I went in for the scholarship, playing the Nocturne, and he gave me a lesson, and then I got the scholarship. And I remember him saying there was one place where I guess I moved my wrist in a certain way or something. He said, "Oh, who taught you to move your wrist that way?" And the idea that someone would teach you how to move, that never occurred to me. I mean, it was, I don't know. But he took me anyway. And he was then my teacher from, I was older, maybe from 13 until I went to get a master's in America. And probably, he's still alive. Probably certainly one of the 2 primary teachers in my life, but maybe the primary teacher in my life, and unbelievably giving. And a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And he liked competitions, and so I did them, and it was great. And then his daughter had gone to a summer school in Canada, and I knew I wanted to come to live in the United States. And Ireland was this is the middle of the early 80s. Ireland was unbelievably depressed. I mean, I still remember going downtown with all the shops sort of shut up and trash blowing in the streets. And it was just, this was a country that had no future. It was very clear. And everybody left. And that was another thing, as all my classmates, we just knew we were going somewhere. And I thought America was going to be so exciting. And there was a summer school And I was completely wrong about Ireland. It's one of the most successful rich countries.
It's beautiful.
It's always been beautiful, but you can't eat beauty. But it was anyway. So all these teachers in America went to Victoria in British Columbia to a thing called the Johannesson International School of the Arts, because it was in a wonderful, beautiful campus of a very posh school with a view of the ocean, and there was tennis courts, and now if the school still existed, I'm sure I'd love to go, because it was this idyllic building with students coming from all over, and Belashiki was there, and he was at the University of Cincinnati, and I liked him, and he liked me, and so I applied to the University of Cincinnati, and I got a scholarship, and it was great. And so then I had done a bachelor's in Trinity College, but my bachelor's wasn't in piano, because of that time they didn't, Trinity College in Dublin, and they didn't do that. So my bachelor's was sort of theory and composition.
Okay.
I mean, that's analysis, and it was not. It was a wonderful education, but not what in a sense, not what I ended up doing at all. But then I went to the University of Cincinnati, and he was on sabbatical the first quarter, and then in the second quarter, my second lesson, which is early January, he said, "You should know I'm going to be in Seattle next year," and it was But I just got here, and we've had 2 lessons, and I'm going to be in Seattle next year. And so 8 of us left Cincinnati. So I did my master's in 1 year. They were not good to let me go through it. And 8 of us went to Seattle then, and we all went to the University of Washington, and I did a doctorate there, and that's how I came to Seattle. But it's in Cincinnati. One of the teachers was Richard Morris, or Dick Morris, and he was the president of the Music Teachers National Association, and I had no idea what that was.
He was also my teacher.
Was he really?
Richard Morris was my teacher. Yes.
No.
Yes, so there's a connection here.
Yes. Were you at the University of Cincinnati?
Yes.
You must have been.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, but he was such a big proponent of Music Teachers National Association.
Yes.
But I do want to go back and talk about what you said about you started teaching when you were 18, and you started teaching with the
way
questions that had no answers. How you've had so many models to look at in the many, many different teachers that you've had. You've had quite a variety of people that you studied with. I know we often say you teach as you were taught.
Yes.
How did you break out of that? What was your aha moment that said, this is not working?
I mean, so my teaching is in, if you like, there are 2 periods of teaching. One was the Irish teaching, because I sometimes I think, why did I teach that way when I had so many wonderful models afterwards? I mean, all my teachers afterwards were nice. It was just, and I mean, if I think about Frank, my father died when I was 14, and he became the father that I no longer had. I mean, he was so nurturing, and he still is so nurturing. When I go back to Ireland, I see him, and it's wonderful. He used to come to. I mean, he's in his 90s now, so he doesn't travel, but he used to come to America, and he would stop off in Seattle, and we'd teach my students, and he was wonderful. Why didn't I teach like that? And then I think because I was teaching beginners, and so I knew how to teach beginners because I didn't have knitting in 2 rooms, but the beginning teacher that I knew was this teacher who taught in the abusive way, with fear, yes, with just and. I mean, I remember she had sprained her thumb for a few months, and she had what's called a finger stall, and it had a strap of black elastic, and then it was dark brown leather over her thumb, and I mean, she was even more scary than she had been, and I gave concerts then, back when I came back to Ireland, having been in America, and she came to one of them, and she hugged me, and it was like, oh, and she was very nice, and it was like, oh no,
It brought back all of those.
yes. Well, but she was this tiny little woman. I had no idea, but I mean, it's she was just this tiny little woman, but no, she was a giant. It's funny when you say it brought back the memories, because I went to Trinity College then in Dublin in music, and the Royal Irish Academy is just beside Trinity College, the back gate of Trinity College, in a place called Westland Row. And one of my friends in school, she had a violin that needed to be left with the porter at the Royal Irish Academy, and I was like, oh, I'll go, I'll get it, I'll bring it for you. She couldn't bring it for some reason, and so I brought it. And as soon as I went, and now I'm a full adult, as soon as I went into that building, suddenly I heard the sounds, and like a wave of fear went over me. And I'm an adult.
Right.
This is not supposed to happen. This is, and so it was sort of, it was just. She was the most effective teacher in one way that I ever have had. But
Yes.
how you said, how did I break out of that? Well, in Ireland, I'm not sure I did, because and my teacher was a very firm believer that you taught. And so when I was 16 or 17, I got a teacher's diploma from an LTCL, Licentiate of Trinity College London, from Trinity College London, and then you could teach in the College of Music, and so I taught in the College of Music, and I was strict, and also when you're insecure, you have to be you're desperately holding on, and you have no idea what you're doing, and it's just overwhelming, and so you being strict was something I knew how to do, because anyone could be, and then I went to America, and when I went to America, I didn't teach. I was doing a master's at the University of Cincinnati. I had never had a single pedagogy class, because I was not going to be a teacher. I was going to be the next Horowitz or the next concert pianist, and that was what.
Yes.
And then I went to the University of Washington, and I'm doing a doctorate, and while I was, and I played concerts, and I was the cheese, and I was asked to judge competitions, and I would judge competitions and, write critiques, because I knew how to do that. And a student, and there was one girl who played in a competition, and she was so lovely, and she played so really well, and it was just, we got on extremely well. And her parents asked me, would I teach her? And and that had happened before. People would say, "Will you?" And I said, "No, I'm not a teacher." But it was such a fun, because I guess whatever the competition was, we had you got a chance to teach some of the students. Anyway, so I thought that was so fun. You sure? And I did teach her, and she was lovely. And of course, now I think, what must her teacher have felt? That the parents said to this guy and left, and I mean, I was clueless, and there were so anyway. So I taught her, and she wanted to do competitions, and I had judged, and she said, "There's this competition that you have to be a member of to do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And it was the Music Teachers National Association competition. And so she did it. And I joined MTNA. And that worked so well. And then I had another student, and it also went well. And then I had a boy who was like supremely ambitious, and he did MTNA, and he won. And then he got to the next level, and I had no idea. And so he went off, and he didn't win that. And then the next year, I had a girl who she won the state, and then she won the region. And this was really hard to do. And now that I know how hard it is actually to do these things.
It is rather difficult, yes.
Good. And then she was in she was in the national finals, and that was in Washington, D.C., and so I went with her, and she was in the collegiate division, or the young artist division, and you had a concerto that you played, and so we brought along a pianist because I didn't know that the teacher could play. So there was another one of my students came, and we all went, and it was in Washington D.C. in 2000, and that was my first MTNA conference. And then so little by little, I just stumbled into this. And then, I'm going to conferences, and I went to the state conference and so on. I'm sort of learning how to teach by just by being at MTNA and watching people do it and having people do competitions. And I'm a very friendly person. And so I started making friends and music teachers and going to the Seattle chapter. And so I did it. And the pedagogy teacher at the University of Washington was this lovely woman called Barbara Lundquist.
Yes.
And I did a doctorate in piano performance, not piano pedagogy. And I remember meeting her at a cocktail party years later. And now I'm a teacher. And I still play concerts, but I'm not Horowitz. I'm never going to be Horowitz. And and I'm meeting her at a cocktail party and so it was something, and I said, it's such a pity I never had a pedagogy course. And she was like, you should have had. And it was just, and so I sort of, all the things that I learned, if I learned them at all, I learned them just by wandering blindly around until I hit something,
Right. Yes. And while she said, well, you should have had a pedagogy course, of course, that is one way of getting to where you are now. You found your own path and you realized that teaching by fear was not going to work.
Yes.
So you found your way in the way that you needed to find it. And you're such a gifted storyteller. And I've always, from the very moment that I saw you teach many, many years ago at a masterclass, and I remember the story you were talking about competitions and a farmer's market.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember that story, but the way you're able to connect with your students and the audience, how did this whole storytelling aspect of you come about? I find it interesting. Your father was a minister and your mother was a school teacher. Were you always in an environment where storytelling was a large part?
I'm Irish, and that is a really big part. And also, I feel, I'm sorry, you thought this was an interview, but it was a monologue because, you ask a question and 20 minutes later I pause for breath.
Because you're a storyteller.
So when I think of masterclasses, one of the things that I realized by going to masterclasses that sometimes you go to masterclasses and they're dull. And they're dull because the person giving the masterclass is teaching a lesson. And if you teach a lesson, you say, well, here, and you point to a place in the music, you've got to do more of this. And you point to whatever it is that's written in the music, and the student goes, and they do more of that, and it's sort of and that's great. But if you're in a masterclass like that, you're looking, and the teacher says, here, you've got to do more of this. And in the audience, you've no idea what here is, what it is that they've got to do more of. But almost more importantly, why do they need to do more of that? And the reason you've got to do more of this because who knows why, but you need to tell the audience. And when you teach a masterclass, I believe that you're teaching not the student, but you are teaching the audience, because there was a really good teacher from Washington State. Her name is Cassandra Carr. And she was talking about this in a class, a master class. And she said something like, I'm teaching, but I'm not teaching the student. I'm teaching you. And she pointed to the audience. And she said, because, she had a student who was in a master class and she was doing sonata. The student was doing a sonata. And the teacher said, this is in sonata allegro form. Do you know what that is? And the child went, no. And so then the rest of the masterclass was talking about sonata, the first subject and the second subject, and how there's contrast and all that stuff. And Cassandra was in the audience fuming because not only did the student know what sonata form was because she had taught her, but the student had done for extra credit a paper on sonata allegro form, but just because the student was there and like the deer in the headlights, she had no idea what was going on. So that's, and so when you teach, the student is not going to remember. The student is just full of fear, and it's scary, and so you teach the audience. And then how do you teach the audience? Well, you try and be entertaining, because if you say, here you need to do more of this, the audience is lost. So you are doing like the hyper teaching. You're more yourself than you ever are, because you have to be entertaining. And if I think of sort of entertaining teachers like Ingrid Clarefield, I mean, she's just, you are there and she is performing and she is larger than life, and it's wonderful. When I also teach sort of I go to things. You said I'm here at the national conference, and one of the things that's, why am I here? I'm here because, and why do I go to conferences? Because you get to see wonderful, wonderful people teach, and you get to go, and I remember, if I think of sort of moments where the scales dropped from my eyes, Marvin Blickenstaff in Oklahoma, he taught a student, and the boy was, it was an intermediate student, and they played a piece, and Marvin worked only on sound. And he worked on the sound, and the boy played, and he worked again and again and again and again. And finally the boy played, and the sound was just beautiful. Only on, 1 bar or 2 bars or whatever. And the boy left, and Marvin said to us, to the audience, he said, my goal here is to try to make him make a sound that is so beautiful that he gets addicted to it. And when he's addicted to it, he's going to want to go to the piano, and he's going to want to practice, because he's going to look for that sound that he now knows that he can make. And that's genius. I mean,
it's motivating by beauty instead of fear.
Exactly. And so that's sort of, I mean, Martin, I don't know if Martin, he changed my teaching in that one thing. And of course, I mean, he's, your founder, and the whole, and he's done that to so many people.
Yes.
That's just, and also, I mean, I another sort of on the same lines, one of my friends was a student of Frances Clark. And he said that she always used to say, we're not running the House of Corrections here.
Yes.
And, because it's so easy when you're teaching to go, the fourth finger should go on that B flat. Right. And, maybe fourth finger should go on that B flat. But isn't it more important that B flat makes you cry?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The beauty.
I had a teacher, and this is. For some reason, I'm talking about regrets today. We're going to start singing
in a positive way.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but
turning regrets on their head.
I mean, when the first quarter, when I was at the University of Cincinnati and Bela Shiki wasn't there, I had a teacher called Santos Ojeda. And Santos Ojeda, he was this charming Cuban man. He was a student of Rosina Levine. But I was waiting for Bela Shiki. I mean, I was waiting. And Santos Ojeda had the most lovely metaphors and similes, and so we're waiting. And he gave lessons, and I was lovely, and he was very fun, and it was very nice. But I was waiting for Bela Shiki to give me the real knowledge. And so then Bela Shiki came, and I got the real knowledge, and thank goodness for that. And Santos said he was lovely, but I did not even think of him as my teacher. But he used similes, metaphors over and over and over again, and that seeped in. And what's sad is that I remember the Bach A minor English suite, which I'd studied with him. Many years later, I revisited it. And this is now after I've been going to conferences, after I've been looking at demonstrations, after my teaching life has been changed. And he had written wonderful things in the music. He was a great teacher, and I had no idea, and I just wasn't ready. And and it's sort of it's not enough to be a great teacher. The student has to be in a place where they're listening, where they're ready to hear it. And that's another regret, is that I wish that I had met him later and said, you were a stunningly good teacher, and I'm sorry I didn't appreciate you for how wonderful you were. So now he's on my list of teachers, because he changed. I mean, he also he didn't change my life as much as he should have, but that was my fault.
Yes. People are sent to us for reasons. I really believe that sometimes you're with somebody and you're not ready for their wisdom yet. But at some point you look back and say, now I get it. Now I understand why this person was in my life at this time. And so now I don't see that as a regret. I see that as reflection and understanding.
Well, I mean, I regret that that I thought, I should write him a letter saying what a wonderful teacher he was. And so I looked him up, and he had died 6 months before. And so, I mean, if there's anything we learn from that, first, be ready when you never, don't be waiting for something because maybe something is right in front of you. And then the other thing is, thank your teachers while they're still alive.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I do want to mention or touch on the fact that you are the MTNA president right now, and you're talking about giving all these master classes and teaching your own students. You are having such an impact on the future of music education. Whether you think of yourself as that, it being that impactful or not in the moment. I know sometimes it's hard to see, like we were saying, in the moment. How do you feel about that? What is your mission as we move forward in music education? What are your goals as MTNA president? What kind of impact do you want to make on the future?
So the thing about living in the first quarter of the 20th century is that landscapes change so quickly. That, I mean, we sort of thought, well, we've kind of got computers figured out now. And then along came COVID. And COVID changed things more than anything that I can think of in the field of education and music education than anything has in such a quick time. Because suddenly the internet, instead of being a thing that you could also do, became the primary thing that you can use to change music education. And I think of the way that Francis Clark Center and that Piano Inspires has embraced that.
You have a way of bringing people with you, of creating this community. And you talk about how the internet can do this, and how we might use it to build relationships or bring people along with us. Do you think it's the internet that's doing that, or do you think it's the people who are doing that?
I think it's both. I mean, I think you have to have a vision. You have to have that, but you also have to have, there's no point in having a vision if you live in the age of the Pony Express. Because, I mean, well, no, that's not true. Your vision has to be different.
Yes.
And the fact that we are now in 2024, and that our vision, that's the amazing tool of connecting, being able to connect people virtually is that's the obvious place to do it. And it's sort of, when we think of music education and when we think of what we're teaching people right now, all our colleges are wrong. Or most of our colleges are wrong, because one of my friends said when I was at college, I should have been taught how to market a studio. I should have been taught how to fill taxes. I should have been taught all these the things about business. And since I graduated, I've done all these things, and I've never once been asked to write a fugue.
Well, perhaps that's still coming. We don't know. No, that I agree very much that we need to create more well-rounded human beings who are leaving the nest of college and not just somebody who can create a fugue.
I mean, if that teacher who said to my parents, if he doesn't do competitions, I won't teach him anymore. If she hadn't said those words, I would be something else right now. And music would not be a part of my life. Music would be something that I hate, because I would still have those overwhelming patterns and memories and feelings that of going into the music building and being overwhelmed by a wave of fear.
Right. And hiding behind the pillar.
Hiding behind the pillar.
Yes.
I mean, I feel so sorry for that little boy. And thank goodness it didn't last. It lasted for a few years, but
I know we are running out of time, and I want to make sure that you get on with your conference, but we always end our interviews with one question, and that is, how does piano inspire you?
Oh, I mean, I'm going back to Marvin Blickenstaff. It's sort of, you can make the most beautiful sound. You can do. I had one of my students is fortunate enough to be in the competition, and she's playing a piece by Florence Price, and it's from, she wrote a series of 4 pieces about a washerwoman. It's one called Evening Shadows, Evening Dreams. I can't remember the name of the piece. Anyway, so she was, and she's playing on a kawaii and and it's a 9-foot and it's a huge, and the last, and I was working with her. She was rehearsing yesterday, and I was working, and the last note she played, sort of that almost the last thing she played in her rehearsal, she had been playing, and I said, and she played the last note, and it was so beautiful. Yes, that's, and her mother was recording, and her mother suddenly was tired because but it's that we can make sound, and sound is everything. And I mean, Marvin's words, it worked. I'm addicted to that sound, and I love to create it myself, and I love to create it in my students. And if they can make it, then we've won.
That is just beautiful.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Peter, for sitting down with me this morning. We appreciate everything you're doing for music education and teachers and students. And we look forward to how you're going to influence the world next.
Oh, you are so very kind.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.